But you've also, stressed that postponement doesn't mean the problem goes away. From your conversations on the ground, do SMEs genuinely, see this as a time to prepare, or is it there is a risk they are simply delaying tough adjustments?
Good morning. And first of all, I think we must give credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
I think the relief package announced by the Prime Minister, particularly the increase in threshold for the SST rental, and of course the commitment not to find any SME during the phase 4 of the invoicing for 1 year. I think this all shows that the government is listening to the SMEs, is listening to the ground. So in that sense, I thank the Prime Minister for these announcements. But my fear is that many SMEs may think that, since the government is relaxing, so we should also be relaxed. I think that's very dangerous because these are, in my mind, temporary reliefs and not permanent ones. We have entered what I call the compliance economy, not just in Malaysia, but I think governments all over the world are imposing more regulatory requirements and forcing businesses to step up and incorporate more steps in their business. Like now, if you receive money from overseas as a business, you now have to prove that this money are legit and not from some illegal source. So there are now many rules: ESG, stamp duties, labor standards, OSHA, PDPA, anti-bribery, and so on. I think it's a kind of compliance that is directly driving up costs and burden for our SMEs. But then we really have no choice because the world has become more interconnected. Supply chains have become more interconnected, and these new rules are needed for this interconnectivity to happen. So whether we like it or not, I think we'll see more rules, more compliance requirements, whether it is local or overseas. So my message to business owners, to SMEs is really, regardless of this relaxation given by the Prime Minister and the government, the message is really to change faster. Because I think, like it or not, I think we need to digitalize our accounting, we need to automate our business, and we should not blame the government. Because if we don't change now, we lock out of the global supply chain. But at the same time, Najib, Samantha has also asked the government to put up a 24-month moratorium on any new costs, whether it is at federal level, whether it's at state level, whether it's local council level. I think this will help give our SMEs a chance to breathe. So while we tackle all these new requirements, this carbon emission report, these higher worker benefits, digitalization, invoicing and whatnot, in the meantime, don't add more costs and more rules for the time being. Let us digest what we have first. I think every SME I'm talking to is asking, why is the government making us do so much more, pay so much more, and so on, how to do business? So like I said, we are asking the government to properly sequence the policy, not to delay it permanently, but at the same time, I think SME cannot just wait and see.
You mentioned about the compliance cost. It's very crucial and important for us to discuss further on that. But before that, even with all the reliefs being announced by the Prime Minister and also the government, you've warned about the triple threat, which is the margin compression, liquidity squeeze, and also low productivity, even with these temporary reliefs. How serious is the risk that Malaysian SMEs could still lose competitiveness, especially against imports or regional players?
I think the triple threat for our SMEs, like you have correctly said, is the margin compression, the liquidity squeeze, and also the stagnant productivity. And coincidentally, all these three are structural in nature. So it's not something that we can change overnight. Our own Samantha Ipsos survey showed that 70% of our SMEs operate with less than 6 months of cash reserves. So our SMEs have become very fragile financially. Our productivity has gone up a little bit year on year, a couple of percentage every year. But if we compare to Singapore, they beat us 4-1 in terms of value add per worker. This is why I've been calling on the government to provide the relief now and essentially to stop all the necessary or unnecessary new rules for the next 24 months. You think about it, if an SME have only 10% profit margin, for example, and then you hit them with all these multi-tier levy, these higher worker benefits, these new OSHA requirements, then even that 10% profit will be gone. So how do we compete with, say, the Indonesian or the Vietnamese, who are investing their profit, their money in growth, while we are drowning in all these sort of taxes, additional fees, and additional rules? So we need to help our SMEs move up the value chain. We need to help them gain new competencies, maybe form industrial clusters and so on. And because if we don't do that, I think the risk is that we continue to lose our competitiveness. So, you will continue to have strong FDIs and GDP growth, and the government can announce all that. But there's a risk that we become a K-shaped economy where larger companies at MNC is going to do very well and have strong GDP growth. But then you will see SMEs becoming more and more uncompetitive and then eventually get wiped out, when competitors like the Chinese and the Americans come in. So this is a real risk we're looking at.
And also, Dato' Samantha, has proposed using this window for transition readiness, including the idea of like SME Transition Academy. What's the biggest, I would say, capability gap you see right now? Is it skills or systems or mindset itself?
I think a lot of time when I meet up with policymakers, they say that SMEs are not improving, despite we give them so much time, so much funding, so much opportunity. We see SMEs are quite stagnant. I think the issue here is not that SMEs do not want to improve. In fact, our survey says that 74% of SMEs already have some kind of structured training plans. I think the issue here is the capability gap. Most of our SMEs are micro or small. They don't have full-time, most of them HR manager or ESG officer or compliance officer. But now the law says that you need OSH coordinator, for example, if you have more than 5 workers. Now, where does a small company with only 3-4 staff or even less than 10 staff going to find a budget for all these additional headcounts and additional specialists? So right now, 30% of our SMEs are still doing things manually, and only 17% have some kind of AI or smart system. So we're stuck, which is why we wanted to propose an industry-led SME Transition Academy. The keyword here is really industry-led. The idea is that we should not rely on consultants, because consultants generally are limited and not very affordable to most SMEs. So we need to train our SME owners and perhaps cross-train their staff to be able to comply with this compliance economy, to be able to do carbon accounting, for example, to comply with PDPA, to comply with all the new export rules and so on. And we want it to be industry-driven and not run by government agencies, because I think the ground is changing very quickly. What we need yesterday, I think by today, it would have changed. So we want to quickly help run these programs, but we hope that the government can fund them. I think when you let the industry drive it, it becomes more efficient. For example, recently, Samantha, together with MPC, Malaysia Productivity Corporation, we awarded 12 of our members with a certification for completing voluntary sustainability reporting. So instead of spending, say, about 50,000 ringgit and months on the report, our own sustainability working group on the ground help our members to do these reports with AI. And we complete them in weeks, practically at no cost. I think these are also based on global standards like GRI. So the question really is, can the government help? Yes. But if you allow SMEs who are doing it to help other SMEs do it, I think then things will move a lot faster. Hence this idea of an industry-led academy.
Dato', while domestic rules have been, eased, we have to admit that we live in a crazy world right now. External pressure, like the EU's CBAM are still coming, and we also, just this morning, we heard that Donald Trump announced 25% tariff to those who have trade ties with Iran. And these are the things that keep evolving and very uncertain in that sense. Are Malaysian SMEs ready for that reality? Are we at risk of losing exporters if readiness doesn't improve fast enough?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think this is where the readiness gap is really the most dangerous for our country, for SMEs. A lot of time it's not even the internal policy, it's actually the global policy. Right. So even if, like recently, the Prime Minister, he relaxed the rules locally, the world is not going to relax their rules for us. Like you mentioned, CBAM has now come into force. So if you export to Europe or you supply to any MNC that export to Europe, you're now part of that carbon tracking loop. So if you don't have the data that is required, you're not paying the tax that is required, you will be dropped by the European customers. So that's a very serious fact. And I think that's something that we really, really need to ensure that our SMEs are ready for this export in terms of standards, in terms of global standards, as well as readiness in terms of fulfilling many of these compliance requirements globally.
All right, Dr. William, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate for you